Okay, thank you all for joining us this evening, and sorry for the delay. We are up to Parsha Beshalach, page 368 in the Hebrew, 369 in the English, and we missed last week's parsha, which was the last of the three Makos, and then the Exodus of Egypt. And this week's parsha starts off with that exodus of the Jewish people leaving. It says, God, what's it called again? I'm sorry. My mistake. I was on the wrong page. 366 in the Hebrew, 367 in the English. So I apologize about that. It says, when Paro sent out the nation, God did not want to send them the way through the Plishtim, which would be just going straight up the coast, right? Just right up the coast. Instead, Kikarvu, because it's close, and God said maybe they will be scared when they see a war, and they will return to Mitzrayim. Right, so instead, he took them through Yamsuf. Therefore, he took them through the desert, and we know the Jewish people. It was definitely not a short trip. It was ended up to be a 40-year trip. Right? Initially, the plan was to be a 2-year trip, but it ended up being a 40-year trip. So, there's a few things that I want to talk about this. So, number one, what does it mean lo nacham? Lo nacham elokim. God did not want. The word is lo. He didn't want to take them out, but they use the word nacham, and we find later on again nachim. Right? What's going on over here? There's something deeper that's going on. The simple translation is, they would go short, and Rashi explains it, that they see a war, and then since it's an easy travel back, they would just run back to Mitzrayim, and therefore God took them into the desert, right? But there's something more going on. A lot of the commentaries ask, and there's many different ideas. God could have made it that the policemen wouldn't fight with them. God could have made it that the clouds of glory would have protected them and they wouldn't have been scared. God could have made it, and they just had the 10 plagues. Come on, like what's going on? And the other question is, why would they be scared? They just had the 10 plagues, right? So why would they be scared and of the Plishtim, right? Like, wow, the Plishtim, all of a sudden the Plishtim, right? But they just had the 10 plagues. So there's a lot of questions that are going. There's a lot of different questions. We've talked about this last year, and I've talked about it in other classes also. There's a lot going on over here regarding this pasuk of what's going on over here. I'm not going to answer those questions directly today, but I do want to tell you a beautiful idea from the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim says on this parsha, he gives a different idea over here, which does answer all the questions, right? But it's not the simple explanation of the pasuk. He says like this, that God did not want to take them the short direction because it will take them through the Plishtim right away. The first encounter that they have, if you just go up the coast, right, from Mitzrayim, if you do Mitzrayim, then you go straight up the coast. First encounter within, I don't know, a day or two, right, maybe a little longer back then, right, would hit the Plishtim. And that's what it means. It's close, and they're going to hit the Plishtim right away, right? And then they'll see Milchama, they'll see a war, not a physical war, but there'll be the spiritual war. Right? They'll have their first spiritual encounter war of when they are free and when they can meet people that are not necessarily going to persecute them. Not a physical war, on the contrary, a spiritual war, right? But they didn't have yet an opportunity to leave Mitzrayim properly. They didn't have yet the opportunity to really develop their spirituality, right? And therefore, Shavu Mitzrayim, they're going to return to Mitzrayim, means to say that we know Mitzrayim's Ira Tuma was one of the most impure places on earth, right? The idol worship in that, and the witchcraft that they served, and so many other, their immorality on so many different fronts. right? They were seeped in impurity and not the way of the Torah, right? V'shavu Mitzrayim, they return to Mitzrayim, not necessarily physically return to Mitzrayim, but they will return to what Mitzrayim represents to them, to that. Back to that stage of, as we know, when they left Mitzrayim, they were on the 49th level of impurity, right? As the Midrash and the Talmud tells us. So the Shavu Mitzrayim, they'll return to Mitzrayim, means to say they'll return to the impurity of Mitzrayim. So therefore, what did God do? Right? God did, so in the contrary, so therefore God, he directed them, right? He directed them towards the midbar. The midbar is, we know, is a place that's desolate. There's no influences in a midbar, right? And therefore midbar is a great place to be able to grow in your spirituality. We find this in the secular world also. People go to meditate out in the forest, and people go to clear their heads up on the mountaintop, right? We find this on the beach, right? I don't know if a beach always is the best place to meditate. I guess if you have a secluded beach, right? But we find this in the secular world also, right? But that's what a midbar represents. Not to jump the gun for next week's Parsha Yisra, but the commentaries all ask, why was the Torah given in the midbar, in the desert, right? We spoke about this in Shavuos, right? This is something that a lot of people ask, is because the desert, the midbar, is a place that has no influence, and you're able to absorb all the information without having outside influence. That's what a midbar is. It's a no man's land. No one owns it, right? There's no influence. And therefore, that's what a midbar represents. A midbar represents a place that one could strengthen their spirituality. Maimonides says that really everybody should live in a midbar. Everybody should move out of the cities and move to the midbar because there's a lack of influence. And what can we do? We can't live in the midbar all day long, right? And therefore, he goes ahead and speaks about how we can be influenced by our societies and things like that. Maimonides speaks about this, right? So therefore, that's what Hashem did over here. He took them. He directed them, the nation, Derech HaMidbar, through the desert, Yamsuf, to which will end up by Yamsuf, right, by the sea. But the idea was to give the Jewish people time to be able to digest and grow. As we know, it took them the 49 days till they received the Torah, right? Each day they grew and they were able to elevate themselves out of the 49th level of impurity, of Tumah, to the 49th level of purity. And it's therefore, says the Chavetz Chaim, right, that the way he explains it, of course, it answers all the questions, right? It's not the most simple explanation of the verse, and therefore for the simple explanation and there are other answers, but the Chavetz Chaim explains that this is what the Torah is telling us, and elaborates the Chavetz Chaim that this is something that we have to reflect on in our daily lives. Right, as we just said, the Rambam says we can't live in a midbar, we can't live in a desert, right? But we have to be aware, and as much as we can, try to remove, or at least for sure not put ourselves in the way of negative influence. If let's say someone, this opportunity to go to a certain place, and you know that there'll be a negative influence there spiritually, right? There could be nice people, but spiritually, you're going to have pressure from your colleagues or your friends to eat non-kosher, or whatever level of non-kosher you are, or there's going to be mixed dancing, or there's going to be worse than mixed. One time I was invited to a gala, and they wrote it's going to be belly dancers there, right? I was like, okay, I'm not going. There's, and if you have to, so then, you make sure that you leave beforehand if it's a certain time. One time I have to go, one a big donor or whatever, I didn't eat anything. I went and I showed my face, and then I made sure I was out, because I knew that, for whatever reason, people feel that that's okay at an event or whatever to have these things, right? So you have to be aware of the negative influence that is constantly around us and surrounding us, and as much as we can to put ourselves in a midbar, right? To be able to reflect and internalize what we've grown and how much what we've taken in, and to say, okay, now I need to digest this and to be able to internalize this and to be able to grow and to elevate myself, and then sort of could go back into society. Now, of course, we can't completely remove ourselves from society, but as the more you grow, the more you strengthen yourself, the more you'll be able to. And don't ever think that one should never ever think that they have outgrown the influence of society. One is always affected by the influence of society, right? You might just have more tools to how to be able to deal with it, but you always have to then go ahead and take the time and reflect and strengthen yourself, right, to make sure that you don't get completely influenced by society. Just as I'm talking of davening 3 times a day, right? When we daven, we're sort of in our own midbar. Right, we're in the base medrash, we're in the base knesset, right? We're davening, we're talking to Hashem, we're able to, remove all other thoughts. Put your phone on silence or turn it off if you're able to, right? Be able to focus on your relationship with Hashem, with your davening, or when you're in a class, same idea. These are opportunities, sort of what we would call a midbar, an opportunity of being able to reflect and grow, knowing that we have the influence around us, but as much as we can to say, okay, that's something I don't have to go to, right? So I was talking to someone once. They said, it depends on what the office is doing that year. They work for one of these big firms, is if they're able to go to the office party or not, right? They said, this year they went to a Blues game, so that was fine, so they're able to go, so they went. Okay, well. So you sit, make sure you're sitting next to another. But he said, like when they have like this, at a bar or whatever it is, or even if it's a party in the office, and that there's this, so then pop in if you need to. You pop in for a few minutes and then you leave, because those atmospheres are atmospheres that could lead to things that are not appropriate for a Jewish person. Again, these are just things to reflect on, to be proactive, and then also take the opportunities. And we do have davening and classes and chavrusas and Shabbos, right? And these things to be able to sort of be that midbar that we need to be able to reflect and to grow. It's a beautiful idea. The Chavetz Chaim says how to understand these 2 first psukim. Right? Again, of course, there's other explanations for the literal explanation of the verse. Right? Rashi speaks, Moshe Feinstein speaks about it. Many speak about these verses. Chavetz Chaim has a novel idea of how to explain this verse, so that all these questions sort of just fall apart, because that's not what the verse is actually talking about. Okay, let's move on. So let's move to verse 19 on the same page. All right, verse continues. V'yikach Moshe es atzmos Yosef imo. Yosef took the bones of Yosef with him. Right, because he made the Jewish people promise. Lamar saying, God will redeem you. And remember to take my bones with you. So we know at the end of Sefer Bereshis, almost the last verse, one of the last verses in Sefer Bereshis in Parsha Vayechi, right? So it says Vayitzaveyu. It says the end. It says Vayishba. The second last pasuk. Vayishba Yosef b'nei Yisrael Lamar. Right. Yosef made swear the Bnei Yisrael, saying, almost word for word, right? So the verses are just sort of repeating over, and that's why Moshe made sure to take out Yosef's bones. The commentaries talk, or Moshe talks about it, others talk about this, and I think I might have talked about this last year, but I think it's something that's important to reiterate, and is always another lesson and more and applications in our lives when we repeat it. Repeating it is learning it again, right? And reinforcing it within ourselves. And that's Chazara, repeating things in Torah is getting a better understanding of it. It's not just being repetitive, right? It's getting another better understanding. The Talmud tells us in Tractate Megillah and other places, Now, one of the rabbis said that he studied it 100 times until he had it like it was in his back pocket, right? That he repeated over that until he truly felt like he understood it. He studied it over 100 times, right? They asked, why did Moshe? Okay, he's made Klal Yisrael swear, so it could be if Moshe was the one that remembered. He could have said, okay, hey guys, don't forget, I have a checklist, right? We're checklist of leaving Mitzrayim, right? We got all our moving trucks, all our moving, donkeys and everything, Donkey Express. And I guess 2 donkeys and a guy. I don't know. Whatever it is. They got it and they said, okay, we have a checklist. Yosef, he made us promise. Actually, the Midrash says that they took all the bones of the tribes, the 12 tribes back. Right? The Midrash tells us, the Torah tells us, okay, check. Okay, who's going to do that? Okay, yeah, Chaim Yankel, you do that. Okay, you make sure you do that. Okay. There was a whole, caravan leaving, So the Torah said, no, Torah goes out of its way to tell us, and that's why it speaks about Yosef, that Moshe Rabbeinu went to get Yosef's bones. He's the one that took it out, himself. Like, why? Like, he could have delegated if he's the one that remembered, but he made promise to all the Jewish people. And the commentaries explain, others, that there's a tremendous lesson the Torah is teaching us over here. That, anybody could have done it, right? But Moshe is the one that did it. Rashi says a very interesting thing over here. The commentaries expand on this different ways. If I remember, Rashi says, no, Rashi doesn't say. Sorry, someone else says it. Someone else says, right? But it's telling us over here. The idea is that it doesn't make a difference how big you are. There's no mitzvah that's too small for anybody to do, right? Taking the book, really? Okay, let me designate that for them. No, he remembered the mitzvah, right? So he took it, right? I think the Talmud says something to the extent of he who it's of mitzvah, lakach mitzvah. Someone that loves mitzvahs takes a mitzvah. I don't remember the exact verbiage, and I apologize. Right, I should have looked it up. But the idea is that in the English to have it's from Proverbs. It says that the wise of a heart takes the performance of a commandment. Right, the wise man makes sure that he takes a mitzvah. Right, he takes the opportunity to take a mitzvah. There's an opportunity, and this is not there won't be any other opportunity to do this mitzvah. Right, so why, if you remembered it, why should I give it to someone else to do it? Yes, I'm a busy man and I have a million things to do, and I have to make sure the whole Klal Yisrael is leaving. No, but a wise man, right, make sure that he takes the mitzvah. Right, that's Moshe Rabbeinu. Right, that's Moshe Rabbeinu. That's a tremendous lesson for us, that we have to constantly be aware that if we have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, right, don't push it off to someone else. Right, we find the same idea. We just went. Hanukkah wasn't too long ago. I mean, it's almost close to its perm, but we read about the Shvatim, the 12 tribes bringing the Chanukah Mishkan, right, bringing the sacrifices for the Chanukah Mishkan, for the inauguration of the Mishkan. We'll read it in Sefer Bamidbar, right? Again, right? But the commentaries ask, why did they bring? Okay, it was nice, but why did they bring this? And the Talmud tells us is because it was actually a negative thing about them, because the heads of the tribes, right, the Nesiim, were the wealthiest of the Jewish people, and they said that whatever what they said is let the Jewish people bring everything for the Mishkan, and whatever's left over, whatever's needed afterwards, we'll write it off. Right, every organization would love to have someone like that. Right, monthlies come to me at the end of the month and tell me what you're missing. We'll write it off. Right, if anybody wants, I'll be happy to have someone do that with me. Right, but that's what the Nesiim said. But at the end of the day, the Jewish people brought everything. It says, they brought more than enough. So the Nesiim had nothing to do with it. They were like, oh my gosh, Believe it or not, they didn't be involved in the Mishkan at all. Right, so what was left over was the stones for the Choshen, and then they brought the inauguration for the Mishkan. But that's why they went ahead and did that, right? But that's the opposite of Moshe. That's oh no, let's just see. No, you have a mitzvah in front of you. You make sure you grab the opportunity to take it. And okay, then afterwards you say, okay, if there's an extra needed, you will write it off, right? We'll take care of it. But make sure you have a mitzvah, you have a fundraiser or something. Make sure you take care of it right away. You have an opportunity to be involved in Kiddush. Make sure you do it right away. You have an opportunity to lead the service. Make sure you take that on. You have an opportunity to be in a minyan, right? Say, oh, if they need a minyan, then I'll come. No, make sure you're that person that's going to be part of the minyan. Whatever it is, right? We have to make sure that we're like Moshe. We take the opportunity because maybe there'll be opportunity to do this type of mitzvah again, but it won't be this mitzvah, right? Every mitzvah, it's its own mitzvah, right? And yes, so that's why Moshe, the Torah goes and emphasizes that Moshe is the one that said, I'm going to take this mitzvah on for myself, right? And that's why it goes ahead and emphasizes it. Okay, let's move on to the end of this. To the end of this page, we're going to spend a little more in the beginning of this week's parsha. We're going to move around. All right, La Yamos Hamudan. So it tells us they went into the desert. All right, it says La Yamos Hamudan non Yoma Vamuda Eshalai Lefnei the cloud of glory did not leave, removed. That's how they translate. La Yamos did not leave, wasn't removed by day, and the fire and the cloud of fire by night in front of the nation. All right, so meaning to say that the Jewish people always had a cloud of glory. They had the regular cloud in front of them during the day and the fire one at night. Right, it was the first headlights for the Jewish people. They had the first concept of headlights to show them the way, right? And that's what the Torah goes ahead and tells us. And then it gets into speak to the Jewish people and go towards and goes into Paro, starting to chase the Jewish people, and then we get to Kriya Samsuf. But I saw this beautiful idea. I think it's a Chavetz Chaim also, right? Maybe it's Moshe Feinstein, maybe it's someone else, that says that what the Torah is telling us over here, there's a lot that the Torah is telling us. What the Torah is telling us over here is that the Jewish people, the cloud of glory represents Hashem's protection of the Jewish people. Right? Hashem's showing them that He's around. Right? He's leading them. He's leading them in the way. Right? That He's leading them. So the pasuk, the way the pasuk is telling Yomush, it will always be there. Right? It was not removed. Hashem's cloud of glory by day and by night, that they could see it with fire, is always around. Right? And we have to remember that Hashem is always around us. Right? Hashem is always watching us. Hashem is always watching us. We, even though now we don't have the ability, spiritual ability to see the cloud of glory that's around us, but Hashem is always around us and is always protecting us. Just like in the Midbar, when we became a nation, we're going into the desert, right? And we followed Hashem, Eretz Zerua, Eretz wandering. We followed Hashem into a wandering land, into a desolate place, right? And Hashem gave us the cloud of glory. He gave us the to constantly watch over us, Yamos, who will not be removed. Right? So too, Yamos, this cloud of glory, this protection of Hashem is never removed. And we have to remember that Hashem is always watching over us. With all its struggles and all the difficulties that we have, right? New threat from Iran and anti-Semitism here, and rabbi getting attacked over there, and people getting hurt over there, and there's always something going on. And yes, unfortunately, these things do happen, but we have to remember in the overall Hashem is always watching over us, and we should always remember that we have to hold our heads high, because we know that we are being watched by Hashem, and we have the protection of Hashem. Okay, let's move on. We're going to move to chapter to chapter 14 and verse 15. So the pasuk, the Torah tells us that they got to the water, right, and the Mitzrim were behind them, right, and we spoke about this last year, verse 14. We spoke about this last year. God will fight for you, right, and you shall remain silent, right. right? We spoke about that last year. Hashem always fights for us. I want to speak about verse 15. So, why scream to me? I mean, and their screaming was not just a screaming, it was davening, right? Why scream to me? All right. Speak to Jewish people, and travel, right? Move forth, all right? Move forth. And then the verse continues. It says, and raise your stick and put it in, right? And then and I will harden the Mitzrayim's heart, and they will follow you into the water. And then the verses continue until the Shir Seyam, speaking about how the waters went back and forth and then split, right? And the Jewish people went it through, and then afterwards the Mitzrayim drowned, right? And then they saw the greatness of Hashem, right? And then the Jewish people sing the Shir Tayam, the song of the sea. So the Rav Moshe Feinstein and others, just the wording of the pasuk is the most inspirational and the most motivating and the greatest advice that we could have of this pasuk. God is saying, right, Ma titzakalai, why are you screaming to me? Speak to the Jewish people and move forth. Meaning to say that so many times we feel stuck, right? We feel like where are we turning? And we think this and we Google that and we speak to this therapist and we speak to this expert and we're this and we're busy. And of course we're doing things, right? But sometimes we just have to move forward, right? Contemplating about our religion. So we do this, so we not do this, the pros and the cons. I know people, some things it's good to do that, right? The pros and the cons of moving into the Eruv, right? Let's write a checklist. No, it's not a time to write a checklist. You just do it, right? You get too busy, you get too into your head, right? And then you stop, and then you lose that whole motivation. You get inspired. You realize that this is something I want to do. So go ahead and move forth. Stop contemplating about it. Stop thinking so much. And you know this is the right thing. Go ahead and do it. So how much? So we give the tzedakah? So we not give the tzedakah? So we don't. Just do it, right? Of course, you can't bankrupt yourself, and you have to make sure that you have money in your bank account, and you have be able to go on a trip and whatever it is, right? Do it respectfully, but just do it, right? I said I come to shul on Shabbos, and I come to shul on Shabbos. Just do it. Go to shul on Shabbos. Stop thinking about it so much. So I wake up in the morning. Just do it and get over it, right? Sometimes we just have to do it. We just have to do it, right? As Nike says, just do it, right? So where it comes from here, right? All good things come from the Torah, right? And this is a tremendous mantra. It's a tremendous way of looking and living life. Now, of course, it has to be with reason, and you have to do it on your level and with everything. But you have to have that attitude of I'm doing it, right? Not the attitude of I'm just going to be reflecting. There was someone I was once talking to. Right? He was mulling over the same idea for 5 years in a row. And there's no movement, right? There's no. I still keep up with him a little bit, but eventually I was like, okay, I have to move on. Let's move. Let's get together. Once a month, every 6 weeks, let's get together and let's chat and let's catch up and move on, right? Because eventually, it becomes a conversation. It's I want to do it, right? I want to, right? So don't want to do it. Right? And that's what Hashem is telling the Jewish people over here, that you got to move forth, right? And again, moving forth also could be that you call your rabbi and have a conversation. What should I do now? Where am I holding? Right? That also is moving forth, right? And what I was saying is, being in the mentality of just contemplating and wanting to do something, and not actually doing something. You have to first want, of course, and you have to, be responsive, think about it and see how I could do it. But you have to have that mindset of that I'm going to be doing it, not going to be stuck in neutral your whole life and just saying, okay, I want to do it, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to do this, and I want to really keep that. I want to learn the Talmud, and I want to this, I want to get to, I want to be able to go to there, I want to go there, right? And also in the secular world, we have these people that they want, and they don't do anything, right? Okay, sometimes because they're dreaming and they don't have the ability, they're still doers, right? But if it's within your reason, and you have these people that are just want to do things, kind of people, and they don't actually do things. And that's what the Torah is telling us. We have to be doers, right, in our lives, and get over that hump and just do it. And I've spoken to many people, and I'm sure all of you, because you are doer kind of people, right? You know, once you do it in the beginning, it's hard, but then it becomes part of your routine. For example, this Wednesday night class, right? It's now part of your routine, right? This is something that you guys do. Yes, of course. Sometimes we're awake, sometimes we can't do it, but it is something that now has become part of your routine. Maybe in the beginning it's making sure, putting on my calendar, this and that, but now it's a do it. This is something that I do, and you feel good about it. You feel like this is something that I'm growing through, and something. And coming to Monday night, partners in Torah. Oh, it's Monday night football. This. No, but now it becomes part of your routine. Wearing a yarmulke, right? And we get a little strange. This, that. There's a guy. I still learn with him in Jacksonville. He now wears his yarmulke, right? At work, every Jewish function that he goes to, right? It doesn't make a difference if it's religious or not. And that's, now he said that, it's like he feels strange not wearing his yarmulke when he's still working on wearing it, when he's not, but now he said it's like part of my routine. Whenever I go to even if it's a federation thing, a non-religious thing, he makes sure he wears his yarmulke because he's a Jewish person at a Jewish function. That's what he's holding. It becomes part of your routine. So we got to have that do-it personality, still growing one step at a time, right? But we have to have that do-it personality. Okay, let's move on. So we're going to move to chapter 15. So the chapter 15 starts with the Song of the Sea, right? Az Yashir Moshe B'nai Yisrael, right? Then, right, Moshe and the Jewish people sang. All right, so just on a side note, right? What's the word uz? Then, right? So Rashi, the simple explanation is when they saw the miracle and they saw that the Egyptians, right? When they saw the Egyptians came to shore, right? But the Talmud tells us that this is also a remnant for that there's going to be the final redemption. Right, the final redemption, the resurrection of the dead. Then in the future, Moshe will sing again with the Jewish people. Right, and this is a makar. This is a place in the Torah that we find about Chiyas HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead. That says, then in the future, right, Moshe and the Jewish people will sing. Right. But that's a side note. I don't want to get into that right now. What I do want to, it's the Song of the Sea in itself could be learned all by itself. I just want to home in on one verse, verse 13. If you go to page 378 in the Hebrew, 379 in the English, so it says, Nachisa b'chastecha amzu ga'alta. Right? With your kindness, you guided this people that you've redeemed. Right? Right? So the Midrash tells us, right? The Tanit Be'Eliyahu tells us that this verse is telling us that what was one of the merits that the Jewish people had of getting out of Egypt was this chastecha, the chesed, right, that they did amongst each other. The chesed, the kindness that they did with each other. Amzu Ga'alta, that was the reason why, one of the reasons why the Jewish people were redeemed. Right? And then the Midrash goes ahead and tells us another reason why they were redeemed, and this is famously we know, is that they three things that the Jewish people didn't change. They didn't change their names. They all had Jewish names, right? And they didn't change their language. They all spoke the Jewish language. And they didn't change their clothing. They all made sure that they wore Jewish type of clothing. Right? So the Chafetz Chaim wants to know, what's the connection of these two things? What's the connection of these are seemingly, it could be they're just two independent things, but of course there's no just two independent things. The verse over here emphasizes on the chesed, right? But also we find in this verse, he goes ahead and speaks about these three things that the Jewish people did. So the Chafetz Chaim goes ahead and elaborates. Chafetz Chaim usually is pretty short on his commentaries on the Torah. Over here, he elaborates, and he speaks about that these three things that the Jewish people kept are things that are identifiers of a Jew. Right? Of course, every mitzvah is important and everything's important, but there's things that identify yourself as a Jew, even when you're on the plane, even when you're in Branson or wherever you are. Right? Identifies as a Jew. You wear a yarmulke. You dress with Jewish clothing. Right? You have a Jewish name. Right? So what's your name? Okay, so I say Avi, right? But others, hi, right? Rivka, it's like there's Hannah, right? You identify yourself. You call yourself. You're on your passport. You're a Jewish person. You have a Jewish name. You identify yourself as a Jew, and the language. The language, we could speak English, but we also speak in a more refined way, right? We speak in a Jew. You try to use as many Hebrew, Baruch Hashem, and with Hashem's help, we speak in a Jewish way, right? That identifies yourself as a Jew. It says the Chafetz Chaim, when we identify ourselves as a Jew and remind ourselves that we're Jewish, then we remind ourselves also that we're the children of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and we're just an extension of one big family. And when we remind ourselves we're an extension of one big family, then of course we're going to do chesed with one another. We're going to help each other out. We're going to stand up for each other and make sure that we're all that our brethren are all taken care of, and our organizations are all taken care of, and there's our people. We don't have people homeless, and we don't have, because we're brothers and sisters, right? We're brothers and sisters, and she says the Chafetz Chaim, that's the ultimate connection. When the more we identify as a Jew, the more we connect to our Judaism, right? The more we remind ourselves that we are brothers and sisters, right? And you see this that unfortunately people that are unaffiliated and even more unaffiliated, right? Completely unaffiliated, they'll give to, I don't know, the animal, but you don't really find them, and they don't really have any connection, right? Because they don't want to identify them. I'm not a Jew. That's not my, okay, yes, I was born. They don't want to identify as a Jew, but the more you identify as a Jew, the more you're connected to your Judaism, the more we have this achva v'reus, this brotherhood, right? This amzu ga'alta, because of, right? You redeemed because you did this kindness, because they did kindness amongst themselves. So the one leads into the other, right? And the more you do kindness with your brothers, right? The more you also you build your relationship with your brothers. The more it's going to help you to identify as a Jew also by doing more mitzvahs and making sure that you identify as a Jew. One feeds into the other, right? And that's the Chafetz Chaim says, right? And something that of course very practical in our days, right? That it's so unfortunately easy to sort of just slip into the melting pot of America, right? And sort of just, okay, sometimes people feel they put on a cap and they think that we don't know they're Jewish. They're still Jewish. We know they're Jewish. Right? They're big Jewish nose and whatever, right? But still, it's easy to sort of melt into the melting pot and try to, I don't know, identify as I move out to Nowheresville and not connect and whatever it is. And no. We have to strengthen that, right? Strengthen our relationship on our identity as a Jew, and that will strengthen also our achva, our kindness to one another, and ensuring the success of all the Jewish people, both individuals, organizations, right, and just in general the Jewish people altogether. Our love for Israel, our love for our brethren in Israel, our love for our brethren here in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, wherever they are, right? The more we identify, the more we build our relationship with them. Okay, let's one more thing I want to talk about today. It's getting a little late. So let's go quickly. So then it says, after that, Miriam took, right, and she's saying with all the ladies, right, it says actually she took Vatikach Miriam and Avias, this is a point to think about. Why does it say the sister of Aaron? Why didn't it say the sister of Aaron and Moshe? Or is this the sister of Moshe? We're not answering that right now. Something to think about, right? She took she took the drums in her hands, right? And she played music with the ladies, and they sang, right? They sang. Just a side point, right? We see that they did this separately. They didn't do it together. Just a side point, something to think about. The Torah clearly tells you that when we're singing, right, it should be separate, right? There's an idea that there shouldn't be mingling, right? Of course, if your family, that's individual family, that's one thing, but as a nation, as a group of people, you see clearly the Torah tells us that they did it separately. Then the Torah goes ahead and they says they left Yamsuf, they left, and we talked about this last year, right? The 3 days the water was bitter. We spoke about this last year and what Moshe did to make the water unbitter, right? And we're going to skip, right, to then the Torah tells us, speaks about. Then the Torah tells us about the man that came down, right? That's on page 384. It speaks about the man that came down. And it's actually brought down that it's a skula for Parnasa, to say the paragraph of Parsha Saman this week. And it's actually in the back of every sitter, so you don't have to try to find it. At the end of the Shachar service, there's the Parsha Saman. If you want to know where it is, I'm happy to send me a message. I'm happy to send you a copy of it. But it's brought down that the man represents Parnasa, that Hashem always takes care of our needs. The Jewish people were completely reliant on Hashem, right? And then it speaks about, we're just jumping a little bit. It speaks a little bit about Shabbos, saying that the man did not fall on Shabbos, right? And then it says that verse page 388, it says left Midbar Sinai with their things, and they V'yachnu b'Refidim, they settled in Refidim, and there was no water, and this is where the first time that they complain about water, and the Be'er Miriam, the rock, the well of Miriam, which was a rock, and Moshe Rabbeinu hit the rock this time. He was supposed to hit the rock, and the water came out. Right, and then last part of the parsha on page 390 speaks about Amalek. Right, the first time that we are introduced to Amalek, it says, Amalek came in Refidim. They came to fight the Jewish people in Refidim. That's where they were, right? And it says, this is what I want to talk about. Verse 9 says, Vayomer Moshe Yeshua. Moshe told Yeshua, V'char lanu anashim, right? Go gather people, right? Go gather people to fight Amalek, right? Machar, tomorrow I will go up to the mountain, right? I need to the top of the mountain, and you will go fight Amalek, right? And then the verse goes ahead and tells us that Yeshua went to fight Amalek, and Moshe, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the mountain, and it said when Moshe's hands were up, they won, they were winning, and Moshe's hands were down, they were losing, and therefore it says that Aaron and Hur were holding Moshe's hands up. And then the parsha finishes off with saying that have to remember, write down and remember what Amalek did and the wiping out of Amalek, and that's also later on in Parshas Kiseitze, right? That's what we read in Parshas Zachar, right? But this is the first time we're introduced to that. So the question the commentaries ask is, why, right? Why did Moshe send Yeshua? Right, this is from the Chavetz Chaim also. Right, why did Moshe send out Yeshua? Why did Moshe himself go out to fight? Right, why Yeshua? And if you're sending someone else, why Yeshua? Why didn't you send out Aaron? Why didn't you send out Pinchas? You know, we're going to get introduced to Pinchas later, right? Why Yeshua? What did he send? What was Yeshua? What was special about Yeshua that he sent out Yeshua to fight Amalek? And what's this thing of but he went to the top of the mountain, and what's this thing? His hands were up. What is it? Magic, right? His hands were up and they won. His hands were down, so they lost. So like some kind of magic trick. Like what's going on over here? So there's many explanations. But Chavetz Chaim says something very beautiful. Chavetz Chaim says that Yeshua, the reason why he sent out Yeshua represents the Amelus Torah. Yeshua represents the toiling of Torah, someone that is completely dedicated to learning Torah. That we find later on. It says Layamas Mitachoel. Yeshua never left Moses' tent. Right? We find that when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountain, right, Yeshua was right there waiting for his master. Yeshua was someone that was completely dedicated, toiling and learning Torah, and even if he got it, he was always in the tent of Torah. That's what Yeshua represents. Right? So says the Chavetz Chaim, this is actually brought down from other places, that Amalek only came, it says it came to Refidim. Right? What is Refidim? So the Talmud tells us the name of Refidim is Rafu Yodeim in Torah. Right? They loosen from Rafui. Refidim comes from Rafui, where they loosened their hands from Torah. They sort of became laxed in learning Torah. Right? And therefore, Amalek, that's why Amalek was able to have an opportunity to attack the Jewish people, because they loosened, they became lax in their learning Torah and their Torah observant. Right? So who's best to go out and fight them? Yeshua. Or Yeshua is someone that's completely engrossed and completely dedicated, right, on the highest level of learning Torah. And says the Chavetz Chaim, that's what it means Moshe Rabbeinu's hands were up. Moshe Rabbeinu's hands were brought down the Luchos. Moshe Rabbeinu's hands was up in Shemayim for 40 days and 40 nights. When his hands were up, right, his hands representing the Koach HaTorah, and the Jewish people saw that, right, and they knew Moshe's hands were up, so they strengthened their commitment of learning Torah. And when his hands were down, it represented that the Jewish peoples were at that time sort of lacking in that and that commitment for learning Torah. So of course they went out to fight a physical war, but it was a spiritual war, right? That was going on over here. And say the comment says that this is something that's practical in our days too. We unfortunately, when we loosen our hands from Torah, from learning Torah, and from Torah observance, unfortunately, the Amalek of the world, which is now sort of represents the non-Jewish world, has the opportunity to start fighting with us. So what we have to do is we have to fight with more learning Torah, with more davening, and more learning Torah, more Torah observance, and strengthening our relationship with Hashem, right? And when we do that, right, then most of the Rabbeinu's hands is up, and we'll win the war, and hopefully Meretz Hashem will bring the final redemption. So this is how this week's Torah portion ends, and this is the constant daily fight that we have with Amalek. The commentaries say, even though we don't know who Amalek is nowadays, but we have a constant daily fight with Amalek. The idea of Amalek, of Refidim, of becoming lax in our Torah observing, becoming lax in our Torah learning, becoming lax in our davening, which is all part of our Torah observance, right? So the way to fight that is by strengthening ourselves in that, right? And then committing to coming to classes, and committing to taking something else on, and committing to learning more Torah, and committing to taking a little more davening, and that way Meretz Hashem will overcome the final war with Amalek, and hopefully Mashiach will come speedily in our days. Everybody have a wonderful evening.